Welcome to All Home Care Matters, the show where we discuss all things home care, with discussions on important age-related matters and topics. Brought to you by Enriched Life Home Care Services, the #1 rated home care provider in Michigan by Top Rated Local.
Hello, and welcome back to All Home Care Matters. If this is your first time visiting us here at the show, we want to say thank you for taking time out to be with us today. We appreciate how valuable everyone's time is, and that's why we try and make each episode here at All Home Care Matters something that will hopefully matter to you. Today, we are honored to be joined by Michael Herrington, the president and co-founder of Ways to Wellness, and Kevin Hansen, the director of growth and development from Home Care Ops. Welcome.
Thank you, Lance.
Thanks for having us.
Here.
Our pleasure. I want to first, before we get into it, I want to have each of you kind of do a summary and introduction of the companies that you're here representing. Michael, we'll first start with you.
Great. Thank you, Lance. My company, Ways to Wellness, we started in 2020, and we're a publisher of activity books for seniors and for caregivers. And I used to represent publishers of puzzle books for many, many years. And I noticed that there wasn't really anything intentional for the senior community. So one of the things that we learned early, and I heard in 2020, was the second leading cause of illness and ultimately death amongst the elderly is loneliness and isolation. So that was our why. And we wanted to come up with content that's very intentional, all the way down to the paper and the font size. And so we create activity books for seniors and caregivers in the senior care space.
All right. Thank you, Michael. And Kevin?
Awesome. No, Michael, thanks for hooking us up and connecting us here. At Home Care Ops, one of our biggest things is working with and connecting with the many home care owners out there that got into this industry with a huge heart. I think compassion and passion drove them to do what they're doing from a caregiver stage, or even as a business entrepreneur that saw this as an industry to invest in. However, many are running up against challenges that they have to overcome and being successful in delivering repeatable, good quality care and building successful businesses. Margins are tough. Caregiver hiring and retaining is tough. And Home Care Ops, Clint and Jessica, the founders, found great success building a multi-state, multi-million-dollar business. People were reaching out to them, asking them how to do what they were doing. And so in 2020, we officially launched Home Care Ops as a support. We built a community on Facebook to bring owners together, to help them connect and network together. And beyond that, we provide some webinars and coaching. And we have a group called Action Leaders, where there's more of a group coaching set up, where we've seen millions and millions of dollars of increase with these owners, which is a great number for them to celebrate. But really, it's the impact that they've been able to increase in their communities, in the lives of the clients and the caregivers that we celebrate. And that's what we really look to do. And these opportunities to reach out and communicate with others and help them see things that are working for other successful home care owners gives them something to aspire to and hopefully influence how they work with their teams and work with their clients.
That's wonderful. Thank you, Kevin. And, Mike, I want to kind of start with you. Ways to Wellness has really carved out a unique space in the senior care landscape. What was the initial why behind the Ways to Wellness brand, and how have your core values influenced how you're building partnerships with other care providers?
Our why, Lance, was really driven by the fact, like I said earlier, about the CDC saying that loneliness and isolation were the second leading cause of illness and death among seniors. So, we really work intentionally to bring content to those folks and really to help caregivers. Caregivers have an incredibly tough job. And so to bring meaningful content where they can go in and maybe pause for a minute and engage with that client in a meaningful way to create stories and really an experience for them together is really, what really drives us.
Yeah, absolutely. And Kevin, you'd mentioned working with home care providers and home care agencies. From your work with agencies at Home Care Ops, what do you see as the most overlooked part of laying a strong operational foundation, and how does getting clear on your why help guide those decisions?
I find it a little ironic that to take that passion and compassion in the industry and then build a business they're kind of taken through a ringer that almost sterilizes their passion, and having that be translated to the communities and the caregivers and the clients they're trying to serve. They have to get into what I call licensees, right? They talk about terms that just don't connect with consumers. They pull away from that why for 6 months to a year while they get this business off the ground, and they get caught up in a lot of the what. And that what holds them in a holding pattern where they don't really develop their processes. They really don't develop their brand communication in a way that provides that consistency. They just build a list of these are the tasks that we complete for you. And that's kind of the standard for 80% plus of the home care business out there. So it's really easy to fall into that industry trap of just this routine. And so having systems in place that can build that consistency, can build those outcomes that are experiences that clients and caregivers both have with your business, which is, I'm a brand marketing geek. That is your brand. What you decide it is isn't really what your brand is. What the overlap between your decision of your company and what the community says about your company, that overlap is your brand. And hopefully that overlap is deep and it's good, so you have a healthy brand rather than a negative brand. And so I think a lot of owners overlook how important their mission is, even after they get through all the technical nonsense, which is essential. We want good businesses licensed and approved, right? And some monitoring out there. That's an essential piece, but it has somewhat made it clinical and sterile, which consumers just they don't connect with that, right? You have to build connective content rather than clinical content in order to have people understand where your business can help them, and to even drive the internal culture that keeps caregivers on board too. So there's like so many facets that just get lost. And so giving owners a foundation to build on that they don't have to keep failing through, because we've already done the trial and error. We've made the mistakes. We've seen other home care owners make the mistakes. We've brought the good ideas together and are putting them in other home care owners' hands so they can navigate through that better and focus more on the experience rather than a bunch of hurdles and obstacles.
Yeah. Yeah. And I know I've said this so many times here on the show, I've lost count, but I feel like here in Michigan, we're a non-licensed state. So anyone and everyone can say they're a home care company, which I think really helps to water down and diminish the home care industry in Michigan, because the families that don't know what they don't know, and that's most of them, they'll find a thing hanging up at the grocery store saying, home care company takes care of your loved one. And it's really just, an individual and maybe one of their friends, and they have no protections, they have no backgrounds, and it's really it's very unfortunate, which it's to the detriment of the industry and these families, but it's to the benefit of the companies like ours that do it the right way, which has led us to be the number one company in Michigan for 8 years straight, because we don't cut those corners, because we are focused as care as the center point of our mission. But it's just helping to raise that awareness and educate people so that they can be on the lookout for those situations and avoid them. But I want to stay with you for a moment, Kevin. And you have a coach agency. You coach agency owners on growth every day. But what patterns have you noticed in how the most successful owners turn client and caregiver experiences into further growth opportunities?
Yeah, that's the biggest thing is, I'll call it humble bragging. And most home care owners are horrible at it because they feel like they need to be more meek and serving to a point of almost self-sacrifice. But those moments, those experiences that they have with caregivers and they have with clients, if they just take a moment to capture those, one, they can know what processes are working well and which aren't, which caregivers and which care managers are working well and which aren't, because they'll have a pattern that they can easily recognize in their processes, and then holding those things and leading with those things in how they communicate, in their marketing and their messaging, in podcasts that they do or interviews that they do. If they lead with more of those success stories that come as a result of the listicles that most people default to, explaining their whats. If you look more at the outcomes, then you have more success. But you have to have those outcomes. And so having home care owners be able to leverage a team, have a system and process set up in place where that team can rely on it, and they have something to look to rather than floundering and having a repeat, a higher frequency of fail, right? Fail is good as long as you learn from it, but you don't want to have this high frequency of failing without learning. And giving them something to come back on and look to and say, all right, these are systems that we can count on. These are processes we can count on. These are our services that we excel in and that we can push further in providing more of, and understanding where those thresholds and limitations are is important for business owners. And so we've built through our coaching program ways for us to lead on things that we've seen successful through experiences in marketing and running businesses in various fashions. I'm not just home care. Clint and Jess have different experiences. Jessica's mostly home care, but we've been able to take those learning moments and put them into a system where home care owners en masse can try them out, come back together, communicate how well it worked, whether it's in our Facebook group where there's just open forum discussion about those things, or in our coaching groups, more finite coaching and workshopping those things to lead to those repeatable outcomes more frequently. And as we've seen owners do that, I mean, we've had some owners go from wanting to just tap out of the industry and say, you know what, enough. Yeah, this is not working, to 6 months later going from investing into and bleeding basically into their business with other efforts outside of the business to turning it into a profitable business, to years later having it worth quite a bit, and having a team that is very independent, so that owner has some freedom and flexibility through that success. I've often said, if success doesn't buy you freedom, what kind of success is it? Right. And when you set out to do a business, you want some benefit for yourself as well as for all the clients you're serving. And that's not a selfish thing to hope for through a business, is to be able to have that freedom and flexibility while still having impact in what you're able to do through your business, but not necessarily in the grind of every task and all the minutia of the business too.
And I like to summarize that by saying you shouldn't work for your business should work for you. Right.
Absolutely.
But that doesn't minimize the sacrifices and the commitment and dedication that is required from the business owners as well. But, you're working for a goal and working for a purpose. Mike, I want to go to you, and I want to ask you how you have seen Ways to Wellness activity books used as tools to enhance the client experience and really help to spark deeper conversations with caregivers and your referral partners.
Well, sure, Lance. It's funny. I reflect back, Kevin, on how we met, and one of our clients, that she's been with us for 2 years, Jen Crum, which is one of your clients, Kevin.
Yep.
She was going out to one of your sessions in Atlanta, and she asked, "Hey, Mike, can you send me some books?" So I sent her some books, and she has the PDFs you can print on location as well. She went down to the session and handed him, I believe, to Clint. Clint got it right away and said, "Wow, what a great way to promote our services in a meaningful way," and kicked it over to Kevin and said, "Get a meeting with Mike and see if we can't work together." So it's awesome how we came together. And it's inspiring, Lance and Kevin, just to hear the stories. Like, I hear stories about caregivers that are going to, or family member that's a caregiver. There's 53 million people caring for somebody with dementia at home, and they're struggling. They don't know how to engage, and it's stressful, and it can be really cause a lot of anxiety too. Well, the activity books, we've heard feedback, have really helped them to, even as they do it together, to build that connectivity with their loved one, that they're learning more about their mom or dad, things that they didn't know, because they're going through reminiscing exercises. They're doing things together that bring that joy and connection. So that's just been amazing. And as far as referral partners go, our secret sauce at Ways to Wellness is these beautiful printed books. We customize them for the brands, right? So the covers are customized for the brand. The messaging on the back cover, which is the most visible cover of any publication, and the inside of the back cover and the inside of the front cover is all theirs. So we're a behind the scenes publisher. We do all the content. We do all the curation. I was with a client yesterday that I said, "Hey, if you want to change the images on your cover to reflect something more personal for you, let's do it." And she's like, "Really?" And so those images on that front cover are her entire team. So it brings that personal touch to the in-home care. It differentiates them when they're out doing the community outreach. We have a customer, a right at home client, that literally said that she could not get into referral partner prospects for 2.5 years. And the books allowed her to do that. And if she said, I said, what do you think that was? And it's something very profound. When you give somebody a gift, you feel good. And when you receive, you feel good. And so there's that reciprocation that goes on. And it's something that's meaningful. So the messaging is there for the brand, but the content, we call it the guts, is really meaningful for the engagement and connectivity.
That's incredible. And, kind of staying with you, Michael, you've worked with brands like you mentioned, Right at Home, and also the National Adult Day Services Association. How would you say your books help them to shift from simply presenting facts about their services to really connect in a meaningful way with seniors?
Facts are really super important, but stories really catch your heart, right? So it's the content, it's the intentionality of the content. It's designed for the seniors. We go on a journey every month through a different state or a different country. We want people to be curious. I have some people say, well, I'm in Arkansas. Why do I want to talk about Montana? And I said, well, if we just did Arkansas, maybe somebody gets a little bored with that. Maybe they never went to Glacier National Park, but we're going to take them on that journey and they're going to learn and they're going to experience that. So it can bring that joy. Or maybe they went on a trip as a kid and they can reminisce. It's amazing to me how their memory of the long-term memory is there. They may not remember what happened a minute ago, but they do know, oh, I went to Glacier when I was in high school. So it's remarkable to hear some of those stories and see that happen.
No, it is really, I'm sure, self-satisfying too, because it really is fulfilling the mission that you have at Ways to Wellness. Kevin, I want to go back to you. So can you also share an example of how a home care agency's use of storytelling has really significantly shifted how they were perceived by clients or even their referral sources?
Yeah, so storytelling is the easiest way to get out of what I'll keep referring to as the industry brand trap, where we just say the same things, show the same images, and have the same logo sometimes too, right? In this industry. And it happens in any industry, really. But a couple that really stand out to me, before joining Home Care Ops fully, I did web design. I helped businesses out. I have 20 plus years of hundreds of businesses in my rearview mirror that I've helped out. And one was from Portland, Maine. She was leaving a position to start her own home care business. And from the very beginning, we had discussions of what was going to set her apart. The logo was reflective of the beautiful coast of Maine. Instead of your traditional logo that you might have in home care. She had images of her with clients along the outdoors in Maine. Like her whole thing that she wanted to be about was finding those clients that wanted to be outdoors with companionship rather than just stuck at home. She wanted to have memory care be stimulated outside instead of just in the home. Like everything would be in home still for part of the day, but their right fit client was, let's get outside. Like, let's go enjoy. You're not locked in the four walls, right? Let's get out and enjoy life. And so from the very beginning, Catherine is her name, had this idea of like, this is who I am. This is the people I want to bring in. And they launched in 2020, rough year to launch. Yeah. But I've talked to her recently, and her husband's left his job and has joined the company, and they're building success. They're having a great time, and it all started off in the right way. Another one that I saw kind of get a new spark of life with storytelling was someone that I ran into in Florida at a conference down there. I was speaking on branding, like how to effectively communicate your success, which is all storytelling, right? There's good stories, there's bad stories. You need to be ahead of the good stories, ahead of all the other stories out there to try and draw people into you. And this lady came up to me at the end of my presentation, showed me her logo, showed me her brand name, which was super tiny on the business card. I swear it was about 7-point font, and it was really hard to read. And it was buried by a massive heart and a pulse that went and died out. And I don't understand why we have pulses that die out at the end of our logos, but that's what they do. So enough said on that. But it wasn't reflective of what she was talking to me about with her business. And in a 5-minute conversation, I said, well, what are you known for? And we talked about some of the outcomes, some of the successes. It's like, how do people recognize you? What makes you stand out? Well, she walks around with a red and white umbrella everywhere she goes, and people know she has an umbrella. And she had this other logo that was very hard to read and very basic, more of a hodgepodge of ideas. And that was on her umbrella. I said, well, sounds like you cover people pretty well with what you provide, and you go around with an umbrella, you already recognize for the umbrella. How about you just pull the umbrella into the logo? You make it a simple one-word logo, just OCHA, and all the other stuff, home health services, is a what? That's not the brand, that's the support of the company. Turned her over to a friend of mine that did her logo. 6 weeks later, she's working on a new website. And now over the last 3 years, 2.5 years now, I've watched her just open up, like her website, her social media, everything's way more active. She's going around with something that she can really get behind, that emphasizes her impact more than the basics that she was running with before. Her content is more about outcomes, and is tied to this symbolism in her visual side of the brand, because it's anchored by the story side of her brand, those outcomes that drive things. And, if we want to provide real solutions to people, we have to convince them that we have a solution that provides a great outcome for their loved one or for them if they're still making the decision. And stories is a way you get there. Stories is a way that you give them confidence in outcomes that are relatable. They're not foreign to them anymore when you tie it in. And I wish I could remember the company now, but when you talk about visual storytelling, there's a company that showed a nurse working with a Parkinson's patient using motion, music, memory strategies. And they could have written this huge blog about the tactical side of that. But in about a 3.5-minute time, I watched this gentleman with Parkinson's go from the old man Parkinson shuffle to doing a country two-step within a 3.5-minute time span. Talk about crazy. Dementia, Alzheimer's, people using music and having them sing. Like my mom did plays and musicals, and with her Lewy body dementia right now, when we talk to her and we bring up musicals and we play music for musicals she was on stage with, it unlocks her memory to other things. And you can't explain that. You can't fact tell that impact. You have to share a story to connect people on that and tie that and anchor that story to your brand, so people will have this desire to either refer you to people they know or work with you if they have a situation that requires your services.
That's incredible, Kevin. I want to stick with you for a moment before we go back to Michael. You're a big advocate for agency owners moving from operator to owner. And this is a question I'm especially interested in, just to get your perspective. What does it take to really trust your team with more leadership, and what mindset shift does that really require of the operator going to owner?
That's a big one. I've been there. I've had businesses I've owned, and you have this passion, you have this desire, and almost a sense, because you started it, you felt that there was something wrong with other solutions out there. You have this sense of pride, humble pride, right? Because we're home care people. But you have this sense of pride that no one can really do it better than you, right? And so letting go of that is a huge challenge. And so bringing in a system that helps you identify opportunities with team members to know who to look for to fill certain positions, they have the capacity, they have the passion to a degree that you have. Now, no one's going to have as much passion as you do in your own business, right? But they need to at least have a passion towards the ownership of what you'll be handing them. They need to get it, want it, and have a capacity to do it, and be able to identify that in home care. Knowing what parts of your ownership of doing things and managing things you're ready to let go of is also a challenge. So how bringing in tools and resources to owners so they can say, okay, this is what I need to let go of. And by letting go of it, I'm actually not decreasing myself, I'm magnifying myself, right? When you've got 3 or 4 care managers instead of you running scheduling and schedulers, like you've just magnified yourself. You didn't dilute yourself. And that's a sticky point for a lot of entrepreneurs, in any industry is to understand that each moment that they hand stuff off and delegate something, it's not a dilution, it's a magnification of who they are and the impact they're going to put in the community. And that's the biggest thing that they have to figure out is, you've said it earlier, right? And I've said it too, doing more through, less in doesn't mean you're less. It means that your mission, your purpose, your why is being so well received that more and more people are following suit with it and joining in it, and in many ways doing it better than you can, because there's only so much capacity, physical capacity and time capacity and mental capacity anyone has. And so that separation, that delegation is huge, so they can create an increase and create a greater impact, more legacy even eventually in their communities. And that's a real sticky point for business owners of any kind, not just home care.
And I don't know if I'm getting ahead of ourselves, but I want to ask this now before we go back to Michael. When you're doing your ownership, coaching and things, I know one of the things I get asked all the time from owners and, home care providers, how do you handle the staffing shortage? What is the number one issue you guys hear when you're doing your ownership coaching?
Yeah, staffing is tough because it's like, what comes first, the caregivers or the clients?
Yeah.
And there's always going to be that battle. The biggest thing is to set up consistency. I coined a term recently called secondhand reactions. It's almost like secondhand smoke. No one desires it, but business owners that don't have good processes that get sucked into a situation react, which causes a ripple effect of reactions through a company. Caregivers that get stuck in a situation where they don't know how to respond react up and up and up until it comes back to the owner. And so that reaction wave back and forth, because they don't have something to lean on, creates that uncertainty. And that uncertainty creates dissatisfaction. Dissatisfaction creates exits at any level within a company. And so building a system that people can repeatedly return to and rely on at various levels, even if it's an owner coming to us and saying on a support call, hey, I ran into this problem, what do I do? And then between us and others on that support call, they've got 10 ideas. Instead of going to Google and getting 1,000 bad ideas, they got 10 good ideas, right? And then be able to come back to the team and confidently being able to say, you know what, let's table that. I'm going to go here and then I'm going to come back with a solution rather than floundering. That gives a team at every level within that team more confidence, and that culture of confidence, that culture of reliability within a company that, yeah, it might not be good right now, but I trust this person to make it better. That's what's going to hold on to people. I get that hours can be a little bit topsy-turvy with caregivers. I get all that can be there, but the numbers that we see from reports out there are just insane. And I don't know how any business can survive on that. But when we have home care owners go from 75 to 80% turnover down to in the teens in turnover because they've built something more predictable for them to follow. So they're not over hiring or they're not overselling services. They have what we call basically right fit client models and non-negotiables, where maybe they can't take that right now. So they're going to say no and refer it to someone else. So they don't get in this sticky situation of not having the capacity to handle a client, but taking them anyway. Right? There's all these balances that we have to look at and say, okay, what's your situation? What modeling do you have to do right now for your forecasting, your planning, to make sure that you have the right amount of caregivers in the wings, to not have the massive attrition that home care agencies are faced with, but also still take care of the clients coming to you. And it's a finite balance, but the tools and resources that we work on and the feedback that other owners are able to give each other helps them find more balance within that chaos, right? in employment world right now.
Well, I know, at least for us, I find the formula is very simple, and it's served us very well. We have less than a 10% leave rate, so our retention rate's like in the high 90%.
It's fantastic.
But, I think everybody can do it, Kevin. I don't think we have any secret formula. Ours is very simple. We hire only when we have positions. We give them set schedules, and we're always honest and upfront, and we don't play games. And I think those three things have just been phenomenally successful for us. But I know I was saying, one of the biggest questions we get asked all the time, or that I get asked when I'm talking to owners across, the US and, different conversations is, how do we solve the staffing shortage? So,
Mhm.
Retention is vitally important, but then also bringing on new staff is important too, so you can take on new clients. Do you guys have any insight into that you want to share quickly before we go to Michael?
I mean, the biggest thing is it is going to get tough, and this is an industry where it's only going to get more competitive. More people are seeing it as a space to jump into. We're going to see a slight decline in the number of seniors for a minute before it rises back up. So we're going to have about a 10 to 11 year slow and then back up. So during that slow, it's going to get more aggressive with that shortage for our industry. The biggest thing is, like, this isn't something people get into as a caregiver to get wealthy. There's another reward there. And to be able to emphasize, again, going back to stories, like, if you can show this limited group of caregivers that you provide that experience that they can get behind and that they can identify with, you pull from a smaller pool. You can't manufacture more people into home care. So it is what it is. All you can hope for is that you bring in people that are in the higher echelon, the cream of the crop, to pull them in, and that you hold on to them. And that stability that you create as an agency holds on to them to get through that. It's like any other business right now. There's shortages in material. There's shortages in a lot of other things out there. I mean, heck, every time I go to a store, I see shortages on the shelves all over the place, right? But some companies are able to get what they get because they've built those relationships and they've built those stability points, the predictable profit models, because they have amazing referral partners that they can rely on, even in some of the lags. So they're not relying on themselves to, out of desperation, go find a client to feed a caregiver. They've got more of an inpouring rather than an urgency. And there's a simple math model I've created, which is desperation plus desperation equals disaster. So if a client is desperate for care and you're really desperate for the hours, you're going to probably find yourself in a situation that's not rewarding for either, which only hurts you down the road in the future, because you've got a bad experience, you got a caregiver that's frustrated, now you have a client that's frustrated, that's saying things about your business that aren't helpful either. So holding back when you need to hold back, pushing forward when you need to push forward on that balance of caregiver needs and client onboarding, it again, like, you've gotten to figure it out because you're in that lower, below 10%, but there's far too many people that don't have it figured out. And if they just understood how other people are doing it, it clicks.
Right.
And so we just want to shine that light on what clicks so they can escape that and do better at it without just hitting that frustration wall over and over again and not knowing how to get around it.
Right. And I think our biggest thing is just, honesty and integrity. You're not,
Yep.
No matter how good you are, you're not going to please everybody. There's always going to be somebody that has an issue. But as long as you're honest and forthright with the staff, I feel like, they will respect that.
Well, real quick, one stat that I always throw out to a lot of businesses is 40% of people, no matter what, will never work with you or hire you or be involved with your business. It could be any factor. It could be things that they've heard about you. It could be they have a relative that they know that does it, that have some affinity towards and some commitment to. It could be a lot of reasons, but no matter how good you do in any industry, the average is 40% will never drink your Kool-Aid, right, so to speak. And it's not anything you can overcome. And so being able to identify that right fit audience for yourself and your own non-negotiables for your business based on your current situation will help you avoid a lot of those pitfalls that turn into churn on clients and caregivers. That's another stat that threw me this last year with one of the reports, is that caregiver turnover is also on the rise, which is crazy. That just means that more businesses are floundering rather than providing continual, repeatable successes and outcomes with clients and caregivers.
Yeah, absolutely. Mike, I want to go back to you. Hearing us talk, about staffing issues and kind of setting yourself apart, that's really a great way that Ways to Wellness helps to support these companies, because you're helping them to set apart from others maybe down the street that don't have these valuable resources like the books with Ways to Wellness. But let's talk about how your books help partners to show the care for the families of the seniors your clients serve.
Sure. Yeah, no, it's it's interesting. I want to talking about stories. I have to share this really fast. Lance, we've talked about stories before, but a couple of weeks ago, we had a lady in senior living in California. She reached out to our support line and she left a voicemail and she wanted to talk to me. And I called her and I didn't know if she was a marketing person or what, but she's a resident. She's 87 years old. Her name is Louise. She lives in California. She lives in assisted living. And she received a book from 2021 that she loved. And she said, I want to know how I can get these books. I love doing the activities. I said, what do you like doing most? She said, word search. I said, okay, no problem. So I said, where do you live? And she told me, and it ended up being a community of one of 40, I believe. And so I put a little care package together for her, sent her some books. I sent her a letter, and now we're texting. We text each other like almost every other day. It's hilarious. My point with this is she felt so engaged with the book. She took the book down to the marketing person who reached out to me, and we ended up doing a mock-up for that community. I said, hey, if you want your local pictures on the cover, we'll do that for you. She said, oh, fantastic. She said, I have a marketing meeting with our entire corporate group yesterday. So she ordered 50 books and she sent it out and she's sharing it now with. So it's interesting. It's the engagement of the book that caught Louise, right? To get her to feel inspired to reach out to us. And then she's like, well, I was like, Louise, I think I need to bring you on board as we scale up our sales staff here. It's incredible. But it's just really remarkable to see and hear these stories, how people are using the books and sharing them. And it's Kevin, it's the same thing, like you, another one of your partners in Colorado reached out, Angie, and she heard about us and she wanted the book. So it's just remarkable how people are seeing the value and sharing it with others and how that's kind of just building just organically. And it's wonderful to see.
That's incredible. Michael, being a brand ambassador for Ways to Wellness, we have that wonderful website section on allhomecarematters.com for Ways to Wellness that we created. And we've had a couple of people reach out and just said how amazing this looks. And, we need to get this for our grandmother. And we sent them right to you guys, even though the link's right there. They may not notice it or they miss it, but I just think, the work you guys are doing at Ways to Wellness and just the tremendous benefit. It's not only a benefit for the loved one to have something for engagement and stimulation, but it's also a benefit for that family caregiver or that professional caregiver to give them a little bit of respite time. Maybe they can go lay out the pills for the week while their loved one is, going through the activity book or any number of things, I
just want to share real quick. So there was a lady who sent us a letter in Wisconsin, and her husband he passed away, but he had Lewy bodies dementia. And in the afternoon, he would typically get agitated between 3 and 5 o'clock. Well, he received his book the day before, Colorful Fun, and that's for folks that like to color and do easier activities. And she sent a note to us thanking us. And what she said was, I thought Bill was sleeping in his lazy boy for like 2 hours, and I didn't hear from Bill. It was 3 o'clock. I walked in. She took a picture. He's on our website, and it's a beautiful picture of this man with the book in his hand. And she said, I just want to thank you. And it really touched my heart because she said, it gave me a break. She said it gave her as a caregiver, the wife, primary caregiver, gave her a break. And that reinforced again our why, that these books are helping people, not only the senior feel good about their abilities, maybe give them a little break, make them feel good about accomplishing something that's incredible, but at giving the caregiver a little bit of a break is just so important.
Absolutely. Kevin, hearing some of Michael's stories, can you share a time when a personal story, either from an owner, a caregiver, or a client, led to a breakthrough at the agency's visibility, hiring success, or for their referral growth?
Yeah. So like with Jen coming to us, we don't really push product at Home Care Ops. We have limited people we'd even call resource partners, and it's because they have a track record of success that we've heard back over and over again from home care owners. And if we don't hear that track record, then we don't really talk about them, right? And so for Jen to come to us and show what she found and talk about the success she had in building relationships with referral partners, it was a big thing for us to see and to recognize, because it's not just storytelling, it's creating stories. You leave that book behind in a doctor's office or a clinic, or a family member with a client, with a patient, excuse me, that's struggling with some form of dementia or Parkinson's or whatever, that they need that stimulation. They're going to see that happen and your name's attached to it. So they're creating a story in a moment for themselves right then and there. And that's where Clint and I got excited about this vision of, okay, let's make it available. I can't promise Mike a ton of sales, but we'll definitely make it available to our audience to know what's there, so they have opportunities to be able to bring that forward. In my own backyard in Idaho Falls, there is an agency that leads their franchise in business. He just sold recently, 10 years in, he sold his business to one of the managers. I'm not going to say brands, but he came into this market with what I consider an already saturated home care group, right? He went out, he had a story to share, personal story, how home care became important to him, why he invested in this franchise, why I wanted to get started. And he started just sharing that story with everyone, including what he would consider competition, or most people would consider competition. In a saturated market, he got to where all but two of the alternates out there for home care were in a back and forth referral relationship with him. So if he was low on caregivers but had someone with a need come in, he didn't say, wait for me for a week while you have this post-hospital care needs, or this immediate fall prevention need, or this immediate whatever need. He'd say, you know what? I'm going to be Santa on Miracle 34th Street, and I'm going to refer you to my buddy, because I know he has caregivers and ample ability to take care of you right now, right? And by giving up business repeatedly in the very beginning, while he was trying to build a team, he ended up dominating this market, which is just crazy. But it was all story driven. He would go to chambers of commerce meetings, instead of getting there and introducing himself, hi, I'm so and so and we do this. He would share a story, which is something I encourage all home care owners to do. We get this default mode of asking each other, hey, what do you do for a living? Which is really, we want to know how much you make, right? Like, we don't care what you do when we ask, what do you do for work? We want to get, is it $200,000 a year? Is it $1 million a year? How much do you make, right? How many Jamba Juices do you own? What we fail to do in those opportunities is to provide impact. So a home care business that takes care of people with dementia, rather than say, I own a home care business, you could say, you know how there seems to be more and more people getting different forms of dementia and families are struggling with that? Yeah, I do. I know someone that has that problem. Yeah, we work with caregivers and families to help that person be more comfortable through those stages of dementia, and help the families not have to deal with it on their own. That's way better than saying we do home care.
Yeah.
Right? I'm a home care owner. Most people are going to think, well, okay, so can you clean my house? Right? Like, they don't understand the jargon. Like, if you give a jargon response rather than a story, they're going to have a hard time connecting with it. So as I've seen other home care owners build partnerships by going into a potential referral source and saying, hey, I'm another home care provider that does this, this, and this. They go and say, hey, can I share something that happened this week with the client? And you share a story. If you know more people looking for that, like, please think of us when you have clients or patients that need in-home care. And that's a way to help stand out. And yes, most places, especially referral partners, are going to hand out a list of however many in the community are there on their list. But when you work with those outpatient people to where they know you, they're going to get pressed for a recommendation, right? And they can say, well, I've heard good things about this or that, right? And if you're not one of those I've heard good things mentions, which is derived by stories, you're going to struggle to get that consistency out of certain referral sources. And so that's the biggest thing, is that growth, that stability, it lives and dies off of what other people are saying about you. And if you're not creating those stories and sharing those stories, then you're not pushing the narrative for your own business. And that's where you can get really in the rears on that quick.
Absolutely. That's so true. And, you're singing my song, Kevin. I am not a salesperson, never have been, never will be. And I don't really care for salespeople. the people that approach you and all they want to do is say, this is what we are, this is what we do, and that happens sometimes here on the show. And, I'll tell these corporations, big corporations, if I have a meeting with them, I'll say, we'd be happy to have you guys on, do a sponsorship, whatever, if it's a legitimate product, if it's, authentic. I said, but what we're not going to do is just have a infomercial talking all about the product. You got to have a story to connect with people because people just tune it out. We're sold every day in the car, on the radio, in the store,
on Facebook. You can't get away from it.
Yeah.
On TikTok, there's ads everywhere.
And that's the last thing people are interested in. You got to connect with them in a personable way where they can relate to you and understand why what you have to offer is going to benefit and make their life better. And, just hard selling people is just not the way to do it. So I'm glad you mentioned that and brought that up.
So to kind of put a cap on that, one of the things that I've said to people that just get so strategic and productive in producing things, I'll just say, you know what, in an industry where there's so much humanity involved, it's so sad to see humanity pull out of the way we talk about what we do. We get so clinical, so sterile, so factual, and so distant from how people talk. Like, most people don't know what respite means. Most people don't know what personal care means. Most people don't know what companionship care means, right? What it means to them is different than what it might mean to us, because we look at the tactical side of it and following through, making caregivers are doing the what's that are required, which leads to an outcome. But that what that we have people do that leads to an outcome is not what the audience connects with. And so to pull that compassion out of the narrative and just give a listicle of what's is not connective. I say create to connect. You create content to connect. You create images and videos that connect to people, and that's at the heart. And they need to have a story that conveys something to have that heart moment that helps them decide. We're all going to be really determined in saying, yeah, I study the facts, I research the facts. But really, at the end of the day, if four things have the same facts, it's the one that pulls at your heartstring that's going to pull you towards them.
Right. Absolutely. I'm going to go to Michael here to wrap up, but Kevin, where would you like viewers and listeners to go to learn more about Home Care Ops and the incredible work you're doing for agency owners?
Yeah, go to homecareops.com. There's a lot of different ways to go once you get there. There's events that we do, webinars. We have a free one coming up. Probably will be already gone by the time this goes live, but there's always something going on through our website you can channel with, whether it's through us directly or through one of our resource partners. We always have something moving for people that aren't in our coaching program that helps move them forward as a home care business. Tools, resources, things that give you a sense of success so you get more confidence as an owner, and gives your team more to empower them and enable them in a good way to lift more where they're standing in their positions and roles.
Absolutely. And, just to follow up before we go to Michael, for a home care agency owner that might be listening to this right now, what is the process? Like, let's say they want to start attending these coaching sessions or, hire home care ops to help them better their, organization and structure and operations. What's that process look like, and what do they need to do?
Yeah, so the main thing is go and check out the tools, resources there. We don't bring on a lot of coaching clients frequently throughout the year, but if you're ready for it, then there's an interview you can book with Nicole. She's a coach over the Action Leaders. See if it's the right time, right fit for you. There is an event coming up in July where it's more of our traditional, hey, let's open up Action Leaders and do some, big group onboarding. It's always great to bring on people at a time because they feel like they have kind of a group of people. I'm in it with you, right? And then you have we have 100 agencies throughout the country, roughly, plus a bunch of operators within those agencies in our coaching program. And so these events that we do help kind of bring a group in together for that sense of, hey, we're together as they enter that. But we've had several jump in, outside of those too. So if you're ready for that, I just say follow the prompts on the website, go to the Action Leader page on the website, book that call, and see if the time is right for you. And if it's not right for you, that happens. Sometimes there's other things you got to accomplish first as an owner. we'll equip you with that so you can get there. We'll point you to the tools and resources so you can get there and then leap into that next stage as an owner.
All right. Thank you so much, Kevin, and appreciate you taking the time to join us and helping to elevate the home care industry. I want to close with Michael. Michael, you've seen your product spark conversations and open doors for providers like these home care agencies we've been talking about and others. What advice do you have for owners who are looking to create, an outreach that feels transactional, less transactional, but more human-centered?
I think when people, it's great conversation, guys, but, I think my advice would be, when you just broadcast your services, it's such a hyper competitive market in home care. It really, I think, Lance, you said it too. Your business is really word of mouth too, which speaks volumes. If people are recommending you, it's just, that's gold, and that's so important. So I think, with the books themselves, it's really about, it's showing you care. It's showing if it's a gift to a family that maybe is looking at your business, it shows that you care and it does promote your services, right? But it takes it a step further. It's more valuable to them than a brochure or a coffee mug. It's just something that, wow, you care about. It's not like, okay, it's show, don't tell. Like, hey, we're really going to engage with your mom or your dad. You're leaving them with a book that shows, oh, wow, they put their money where their mouth is. They really do care. So the branding's on it, but it's also what's in the guts that matter, right? And it shows that you care about, cognitive stimulation and connectivity.
That's incredible. And I want to mention, you can go to your Ways to Wellness Trusted Products page on our website to get your free activity book. But I want people to go to your website. Where do you want them to go to get their free activity book and to learn more about Ways to Wellness?
Sure. You just go to our website. It's ways2wellness.health. And at the very top, you just click on free sample, and you can print up a free sample. It's not the actual physical book that's a free book, but if you want, people want to talk. If it's an in-home care company that wants to talk about custom branded activity books for your business, we're here. You can book a meeting with me and others. And it's on our website. We're on all the social media platforms as well. But just ways2wellness.health if you want to learn more.
Fantastic. And we'll have that in the show notes for everybody as well. Kevin Hansen, Michael Herrington, thank you guys so much for taking time out to speak with us today.
Appreciate you. Thank you.
Have a great day.
Take care, guys.
Thank you for joining us today here at All Home Care Matters. All Home Care Matters is here to help families as they navigate these long-term care issues. We invite you to visit us at allhomecarematters.com, where there's a private, secure, fillable form where you can give us feedback, show ideas, or if you have questions. Every form is read and responded to. And remember, you can listen to the show on any of your favorite podcast streaming platforms or watch the show on our official YouTube channel. Just make sure that you hit that subscribe button so that you never miss an episode. We'd also like to say thank you again to Michael Herrington from Ways to Wellness and Kevin Hansen from Home Care Ops for joining us. We look forward to seeing you again here at All Home Care Matters.
Thank you for joining us today. We look forward to you joining us again on another episode of All Home Care Matters. To learn more about the show and to connect with us, visit us at allhomecarematters.com.